Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable carbon-neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thank you very much for joining the conversation today. Founded in 1937 in the northern Sacramento Valley of California, Lundberg Family Farms has been committed to leaving the land better than they found it and learning from previous generations since its inception. The company, now led by the third and fourth generation of Lundbergs, recently introduced its regenerative organic certified white Basmati rice. And we're joined today by Bryce Lundberg, whose great-grandfather started the farm. Since then, the company has built a network of about 40 farms and partners that grow, mill, and distribute 107 types of certified organic non-GMO products, while preserving soil health and embracing renewable energy and aggressive recycling and reuse practices. We wanted to learn more. Lundberg Family Farms recycles 99.7% of its company waste and is exploring sustainable packaging options. We'll discover the evolving organic certifications they're relying on and how a staple like rice can be delivered sustainably with a circular approach to packaging. But before we start the conversation, a few key facts about rice. White rice is a little less nutritious than brown, red, or other colored rice, which contain more iron, zinc, copper, manganese, and selenium than white rice. Lundberg Family Farms grows primarily brown rice, a whole grain rice that is left in the fields longer to improve its flavor and nutritional benefits. Despite the nutritional advantages of brown rice, surprisingly, most of the rice consumed globally is of a white variety that's been milled and polished. The United States grows about 10.7 million tons of rice a year, according to the Department of Agriculture, and in California, about 500,000 acres are planted with rice annually. As California struggles with drought, as well as this year's flooding following record winter snowfall, rice cultivation, which involves flooding fields late in the season, will need to make better use of water, just as all farmers in California will. At a time when their almond farming neighbors are cutting down trees, the Lundbergs and other rice farmers face new challenges that we'll dig into today. You can learn more about Lundberg Family Farms at www.lundberg.com. Welcome to the show, Bryce. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Great to be with you today, Mitch.
Well, thanks for joining us. You know, your grandfather started farming with a commitment to leave the land better than he found it. And I want to start off just by asking, how has the soil on your property changed over the years? And do you feel like you're making progress towards your grandfather's commitment?
Well, it all starts with the soil. And I am really thankful as a third generation farmer that my grandfather had the focus on the soil. He went through the Dust Bowl, the Depression in Nebraska, came to California in the 30s and said, we're going to farm differently. And so he focused on the soil. My dad and his brothers focused on the soil, and we continue to. So we do conduct soil analysis. Mm-hmm. And with the soil analysis, we're kind of looking a lot of things, but organic matter to me is kind of the primary indicator of the health of the soil. But we also look, hands-on. You got to look at the tilth of the soil. You want to look at what's in the soil, appearance. And I think I like to even smell the soil and look for a healthy smell.
What is a healthy smell like?
Good point. Well, I can tell you, in some ways, I think I can tell you what a healthy smell isn't. But, okay. You don't want any kind of a foul. But I think, in some ways, it's, to me, I'm smelling ripe fruit, mm-hmm. right? Smells like ripe bananas or ripe. You just get your nose right in there, and it's going to give you an indication that it's clean and I think kind of a crisp, but also just an earthy smell. It reminds me of ripe fruit. That's something you want to eat.
I'm going to try that. I think that I need to do that in my own backyard where I garden, obviously not at the scale you do. Now,
the other thing that I think we look at is, we look at productivity and weed pressure and, of course, disease suppression. A healthy soil is going to suppress mm-hmm. disease. And so I think those are things we're looking for. course, a healthy soil produces healthy plants
Mm-hmm.
that produce healthy food, that support healthy people and a healthy environment. But it all starts with healthy soil.
Now, you are in one of the most water stressed regions in the country, and of course, this year has been an exception. We've had record rain. There's a lot of flooding in California. How has farming and water usage in the Central Valley changed over the years? And is this year an exception, or is it just are people thinking this is the beginning of a relief from the drought?
Well, we live and farm in California. We're in the way north, right? Mm-hmm. We are 150 miles north of San Francisco, 100 miles north of Sacramento. We are where water really lives and starts in California, but it's a big state, right? Mm-hmm. We have a huge metropolis in the Los Angeles area, 500 miles south of us, that is thirsty and needs to get water from other regions. And so do we think it's going to be a beginning of a wet cycle? Probably not. California is really in a state of perpetual drought. Yeah. And there's periods then where that drought is broken. But we need to be careful and efficient and effective with our water. We live in an area, though, and farm in an area where we have the Sacramento River. Mitch, it's a really robust river. It has tributaries, the Feather River, Yuba River, American River, Bear River. In the tributaries of the Sacramento River, there's on average more water, 1 million more acre feet than the Colorado. And it's hard to believe because the Colorado River is so robust. But the Sacramento River is an incredibly productive river, and the watershed that we live in and farm in is an incredibly robust watershed. In the Sacramento River, there's 10 million acre feet of storage. On the Colorado River, there's 60 million acre feet of storage. And so when you get that big year, when you have a real flood, and this Colorado River can generally hold it. Here in California, we let most of it go to the ocean, and there's a certain environmental benefit in letting water run through the rivers and clean them up and run through the Sacramento River Delta estuary and I would say help improve and clean it up. But we are going to continually have issues with drought in California, and we need to be part of that.
Well, how will your farming practices need to change as we go deeper into the climate crisis? What are you thinking about doing? Do you need to explore new cultivars, for instance, in order to adapt to the changes?
Well, we are looking and working with shorter seasoned cultivars. And the long season cultivars, even though many of them are wonderful varieties of rice, we're growing less of them, or we're stopping to utilize those varieties. But we're a very efficient. California rice is really very efficient. We farm in the far north. Mm-hmm. The water's first in the rivers used by fish. It's diverted out into the fields, and then what leaves our fields goes back to the streams and rivers and back into the Sacramento River system. And so it's a flow-through system. And the other thing about California water, Mitch, is that we need to learn to use water for multiple benefits, for the environment, for people, for farms, for communities. Single-use water is really not an option for California. Mitch, we still flood our fields, and I think we're going to continue to flood them. I don't see us stopping the production of rice with flooded fields. Flooding fields offers I think great habitat for birds, both in the spring, summer, but especially in the winter. When we flood our fields, we also are supporting the aquifer, and our aquifers are really in wonderful shape. Up here in Northern California, we still have aquifers that supports the streams and rivers because they're so
Do you
full.
see the aquifer levels staying stable, or are they rising or falling?
Where we are growing rice, they're very stable. Our water in the summer maybe drops down to 50 feet, the aquifer, and then back in the winter, we have several wells that continue to artesian because the aquifer is so full that it can't take more recharge. It rejects it, and rejecting recharge is a good thing, because where does it reject it? It rejects it into the streams and rivers,
Sure.
and that's to help sustain the creeks and rivers.
Well, I think one of the benefits of flooding the fields too is that it's natural weed suppression, which relieves you of the need for a lot of pesticides. So there are a variety of benefits.
There are. We have looked at other systems, Mitch. One of the things that I would say about my grandparents and about my dad and uncles, the first and second generation of our farmers of our family, is they looked for alternatives, and they had reasons for looking for alternatives. Like you say, flooding fields is our form of weed management. For grass, we flood it and keep it deep until the grass weeds are drowned. And then we let the water down and we dry the fields up for around 30 days in the middle of the summer. And that's our form of working with aquatic weeds. Here in Northern California, it's rainy in the winter, but it's dry and hot in the summer. And it's predictably dry. Many areas of the world where rice is grown it rains in the growing season. Here it doesn't. And so we can dry the fields up. The rice will live longer than the aquatics, right? The bulrushes, the lilies, the duck salads, they'll all dry up. And then the rice will continue to sustain until the point where the aquatic weeds have dried up, and then we put the water back on. But nature is strong. Nature is so robust that and nature flexes. And the more you only have one system of deep water and dry up, the more those weeds are going to accommodate that and learn how to adjust to that. And so my dad and uncles always were looking for alternate systems. And we've tried no-till and worked hard at no-till, sprinkling rice rather than flooding it. It wasn't a successful system. We worked at drill seeding or ground seeding rice and keeping it dry for several weeks at the beginning of the year. But that hasn't worked either. We've worked at subsurface irrigation for rice. We've tried that twice. And I would expect we'll eventually try it again. But I don't think it's a replacement for flooding rice, but I think it's having an alternate system available. And I think that's always important.
Well, let me ask, what did you have to do in terms of changing your practices to get the regenerative organic certified white basmati rice to market? What were there changes that were harder to make or easier to make?
The regenerative organic certification, I think, has been a validation for us of our farming practices.
Okay, so you didn't really change. You basically got certified to the fact that you were already regenerative?
I think that is our yeah, you're right, Mitch. We started talking with the team from Regenerative Organics Alliance, or the team that works with Regenerative Organic certification, about a year before we applied. The standards are strong, and the definition is a solid definition for regenerative organic. There are areas that we think weren't necessarily written or thought about water seeded rice or paddy rice, and that's the reason for the long, I would say, beginning of a relationship and a conversation. And we're thankful that the Regenerative Organic Alliance has an interest in learning more about different farming systems and how to apply. We think that that we believe that it needs to be flexible. Growing rice in organic, regenerative organic rice in Northern California is going to look different than how it looks in Japan or India or the southern states, and understanding how the farming practices are implemented. For one, Mitch, well, there's three main pillars, right? Soil health,
mm-hmm.
animal welfare, and fair practices for people,
mm-hmm.
Or social element. And we don't have animals that we tend to. We don't have cows or sheep or goats or chickens, but we have thousands and thousands of birds that come through our farm every winter, and they see that as that we don't have to own the birds or own the animals, but that we care for them, and we advocate for them, and we have a place for them. And so working with the wild is a way that they said, yeah, this works as rotational grazing.
And biodiversity is incredibly important as a regenerative requirement. And rice fields, as you mentioned earlier, they're a stopping point for migratory birds. And you have this wonderful story about how you save baby ducks every year. Tell us about how you find, collect, and raise those eggs in support of those wild bird populations.
Well, crop rotation is a key element in soil health and in regenerative organic farming. And so we grow cover crops on a portion of our ground every winter. They were planted after the rice harvest. And as those cover crops grow all winter, and then they start to really push and flourish in the spring, those cover crops are really magnets for the local mallard population. And most rice farmers don't plant cover crops, right? But as it's been our practice since my grandfather came to California, those cover crop fields are magnets for the local bird population, and they'll come in and develop nests in there. And if they've started nesting before we start preparing our fields, we've just felt like for a long time that we need to respect the work of the birds and do our best to rescue those eggs. And so prior to sending equipment into the fields, we'll do an evaluation of, are there birds nesting? And if there are, we're going to call in a team. We're very fortunate that the California Waterfowl Association and District 10 Egg Rescue or Egg Salvage Team brings out volunteers. So initially, we usually have an event for children, and it's an educational opportunity, but they can do about 10 acres in a morning. The team,
well, you basically comb the field in a couple of different ways. Collect
that's right,
and you raise those chicks.
That's right. We go through the fields with ATVs, with ropes in between and noisemakers that are on those ropes. Mm-hmm. And the hens, they sit tight until those noisemakers are right on top of them. They flush up, and then we go and rescue the eggs. They're brought to an incubator where they're hatched and raised, and then released into the wild. And they are banded, and so those bands are found all throughout the Pacific Flyway, from the south to the far north, up in the northern parts of Canada. So we know that those birds engage and join the wild population and move up and down the Pacific Flyway. But it is one of those, I think, feel good, really good programs that you just wanted to do and support. And
It caught my attention immediately, and it's an inspiring story because so many humans just ignore nature or walk all over it, and you guys are not doing that. It's clear. I want to take a quick commercial break. I want to come back and talk more about what you're doing at your headquarters to lower your overall footprint. We'll be right back. And we are back to continue speaking with Bryce Lundberg. He's the third generation leader of Lundberg Family Farms in Northern California. We're talking about their regenerative rice growing efforts. And let's turn to what you're doing at headquarters, Bryce. Lundberg Family Farms is working to achieve 100% renewable energy. You've got wind and solar at your headquarters. How have you deployed it, and what did you have to do to get to where you are today, which is pretty impressive?
We built our first solar array in 2005, and PG&E, our utility, has been helpful, and I think they were probably more helpful.
How so?
Well,
I mean,
I think they're more helpful
PG&E gets such a bad rap.
Yeah, they do now, right? And with all the fires that we've had in our region, they do have a bad name and a bad rap. But back then, they were really supportive of getting solar going. And the first solar array we built was at our drying and storage facility, where our rice comes in the fall. Our heavy use of energy is in the fall, but the use of the production is really heavy in the summer. And so it was really important that we could bank that energy and be able to bank it at a certain rate and then pull it out at that same rate. And they were really helpful and flexible that we could make energy at a time they needed it. It would go into their lines, and then they would recognize that it was really valuable and give it back to us or let us use it, even though we were using it at a time when it was at a lower cost. They would give it back to us at
okay. So
value.
They did the storage. I had the impression you had an on-site battery, but they're actually okay. So you're doing
a put it into relationship with system. We would run our meters backwards, and they would. Without that, it'd be really really hard. And so, but we could bank a lot of energy with them, and then pull it back from banking when we're in our heavy use of energy. And so that relationship was really important. But PG&E's changed a lot over the last 20 years. And they don't want to, they want to take it at high rates and then give it back to you at low rates. And so batteries are becoming, I think, a bigger and bigger, more important thing, because even though you're making energy during peak hours when we need it, back at other hours, they're not recognizing that we made energy at peak times. So I think it's harder and harder to be utilize our solar in the most efficient or most productive way.
How far along are you to achieving 100% renewable energy use at headquarters?
Well, we generate only 20% of our on-site ourselves, Mitch. We have 1.9 megawatts of solar at our headquarters. Every roof has solar on it. We have some ground arrays. The next step is to, I think, cover all of our parking areas. But it is a challenge to want to put solar on productive land. But I think we're going to need to do more solar on. We don't have any active windmills on our headquarters. We offset all of our energy with wind and solar, but we produce only 20% with a commitment of building more. But
can panels be or co-located with rice in the field? Do they work together in the way that some other crops do?
The solar panels and rice, I think that'd be tough. But I think we could cover and so many of our fields are so far away
Mhm.
from grids, or lines. You'd have to put them where, or build lines to them. But um, I'm going to say we have more opportunity, and we have in our um, sustainability plans and in our capital plans, we have more solar. Um, One of the things that we also, looking at is, just ways to be more efficient um, in our in our in our food production. Um, I love the equipment we have. We have over 300 rice cake machines that we build ourselves. And I'm really proud of those rice cake machines. But I think we're looking at, buying some machines that are more efficient.
Mhm.
And the more efficient we are, the less energy we use, the higher that number goes up as well.
Well, you have some really impressive recycling efforts on the farm and in the mills and packaging facilities. Tell us what you're doing with all of the commercial waste that used to go to landfill.
Well, we are 99.7 recycle recycling of our of our recyclables. That means all of our rice hulls, all of our dryer materials, all our broken rice, all of our food waste, our uniforms, our cardboards, all the papers, all the plastics are all recycled. Lacey Moore runs our sustainability efforts. She has a team right on site that is working with all those materials, making sure they're separated. Everything that can be recycled is going to recycling. Um, of course, she doesn't spend a lot of time in dumpsters or in those uh, bins pulling out recycling, but they do because they need to do those audits and make sure that they're that the work that we say we're doing is being done. And so um, we do have a long ways to go. Mitch, one of the things that I appreciate in reading your bio is that the work is never done. We've never achieved an end goal. It's continuous improvement, and continuous improvement is one of our core values. And we have work to do. One of the areas we have significant work to do is in our soft packages.
Mhm.
And I would love to say that all of our soft packages are easily recyclable. They're not, and that is an area we have a long ways to go in. But the things that we can recycle now, we are recycling, and we're achieving a really high level of recyclable goods here at Lundberg Family Farms.
Well, in addition to what you're doing on site, you have a recycling program for some of your packaging with TerraCycle. Do you have a sense of how much of the packaging that you sell actually ends up getting recycled in the end?
That TerraCycle program, I think, is a great program, but we don't know, Mitch, how much gets recycled. We have recycling bins here and at our headquarters, and they get used. They're, I imagine we're one of the highest single points of recycling. All of our rice packages, our rice cake packages, everything that is in a rice chip comes in a rice chip bag. They're all, you can send them into TerraCycle free of charge, and I think it's a great way to, well, if we don't have a recyclable package, it's really important that we offer consumers a way to recycle it uh, and, uh, and and be productive with those packages.
I also read that you're working to develop a compostable bag. What is the big challenge in sealing and protecting, for instance, a rice product? Is the moisture barrier the challenge?
I think it is, Mitch. It's an area that it's a little outside of my
Mhm.
area of strength, but the priority is the integrity of the product, food safety, and integrity of our products. And I do think the moisture barrier and the air barrier, I think, are important. to keep rice fresh, right? So you think of rice as being a a stable food product, but it has a shelf life, and especially brown rice, you want to protect that bran layer. You don't want it to go rancid, and you do want to then be able to protect the product and
What generally is the shelf life of rice? I actually have always thought of it as something you could just store as long as it was kept dry. How long should I actually keep it?
Well, cool and dry is critical, right? So if it's in the sun and it's warm, it's going to be really short. But as long as you keep it cool and dry and out of sunlight, it should last for a long time. If you put it in the freezer, it's almost indefinite. If you have a basement and you can keep it in a cool and dry area, but it has a 1 year shelf life. Oh, yeah, put a 1 year best if used by date on it. And but that 1 year date is in some ways a little bit deceiving, in that if you put it in the sun and it's in a warm spot,
Sure.
it's not gonna last that long. If you keep it cool and dry and out of the sun, it could last much longer than that.
I'm curious whether you hear from your consumers or from restaurants and others about their interest in understanding your carbon emissions, the compostability of the packaging, and how does your team take in that feedback and start to design communications about the sustainability of your products? This is a challenge that all brands are having, so I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, you're correct. Consumers do want to know, and they do ask, and those are challenging questions, Mitch, about the kind of greenhouse gas footprint or the climate footprint or the carbon footprint. We are working on those questions. We have somebody working on scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and we've completed scope 1 and 2 for our operation, and we're working on building a baseline for our farming operation. But it's complicated for
Sure.
a vertically integrated operation that goes from the soil to the finished good. But we do have consumers who ask. I think some of the most active are the natural and organic markets, the cooperative markets, but also then restaurant chains that have that very kind of compact supply chain from us to them, that they're serving meals to their consumers, and so we are working on that. We believe that caring for the soil, farming regenerative organic, is sequestering carbon and is great for the environment. It's great for climate change, but it does. We did underwrite a research study at UC Davis on greenhouse gas in organic rice farming. It should be published later this year. I think it shows that that an organic farming or a regenerative organic farming, it's not worse, but we think it's better. It's a challenging thing. That study was I would say a narrow study, looking at just the production season, looking at the greenhouse gas produced, and not looking at the holistic of what the rice is actually sequestering, what the cover crop is sequestering, and but it does show that our practices, because we use so much organic matter, because we're using natural fertility inputs, the potential for greenhouse gas, I think, is high, but the actual production is not that high. It's not higher than a conventional system that is not utilizing organic matter in their production system.
Does the fact that you're pretty deeply vertically integrated potentially help you get a full picture of this in the long term?
I think it does, because again, our supply chain, or our production system is internalized, right? And we can get, I think, a better and full picture of it. I think a lot of the systems that are in place for studying and for measuring aren't that advanced for rice farming or regenerative organic rice farming in California. I think we're finding out that we need to build those models ourselves, and working at implementing them.
Well, it would be great to continue that conversation as you get more information. We'd love to learn more. Some of our listeners are going to be making dinner as they listen to this show. Can you share your favorite recipe that uses your regenerative rice?
Well, thank you. I enjoy eating rice every day, Mitch. Growing up, our number one variety was organic short grain brown rice, right? Mm-hmm. For probably the first 10, 12 years, all we produced was organic short grain brown rice. And that still is my favorite today.
So what do you make with a short grain brown rice?
Well, it's so versatile, but one of my favorite meals is to have short grain brown rice with a red curry, right? A red curry with a chicken or vegetarian, and that is just lovely. Brown rice is so healthy for you. When I was growing up, Mitch, we didn't do white rice, right? We were committed just to brown rice. I used to call, and my parents would remind us that, okay, this is awful, but they would sometimes call white rice tombstone rice, because brown rice comparatively has all the B vitamins. It has the germ. It has the oils that are so good for our guts and for our skin and everything. The bran layer is about 25% oil, and that brown rice oil is so good for you. But consumers like the versatility, and we produce 17 varieties of rice, and many of them are culturally consumed as white rice, like arborio or basmatis. And so we want to be responsive and respectful for our consumers. And if you're eating a sushi, of course you want to eat our sushi rice. But for me, if I was going to make a dinner tonight, Mitch, I'd probably want to use organic short grain brown rice and have a nice red curry on it.
Well, how can you guys offer a lot of recipes? Where can they find them on the site and keep up with what Lundberg Family Farms is doing?
Well, we have a website. It's at Lundberg.com, and you can find an amazing amount of creative recipes there, from using the rice in appetizers to make arancini, to desserts. One of our family's staples was a rice pudding, and my Aunt Ruth would make the most fabulous brown rice pudding. But of course, our family's sweetest tradition, making a white rice pudding or a regular rice pudding with a little cinnamon and creaminess, is just awesome. But one of my mom's favorite meals, and one of mine still this day, is a taco stack, having a base of chips, putting a Spanish rice on top of that, and then all your favorite ingredients that you would have for a nachos, if that was olives and avocado and jalapenos, and it's very simple, but incredibly delicious. And when you make that with short grain brown rice, it's incredibly nutritious. I'm reminded that brown rice has all that fiber, Mitch, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so good for our whole system. But that brown rice, I don't want to be crass about it, but it's so good for our colons, right? It's like a scrubber. That and how important that is to have the high fiber. And I think if you go online, you can find research that talks about how important it is, or how healthy it is to have high brown rice in your diet.
Well, your passion for rice, it just totally blossomed for me. But you made me hungry and you made me think about my health. Bryce, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We appreciate you explaining what Lundberg Family Farms is doing.
Mitch, what a privilege. You know, our farm is out here in Richvale. It's about 200 people. Today, just in the few minutes, there'll be thousands of more people that will know about our farm because of our visit. Thank you for letting us visit with your listeners and people who care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been talking with Lundberg Family Farms' third generation of leadership, Bryce Lundberg. You can learn more about the company, their continuing environmental efforts, and their annual collection of duck eggs, which they raise and release into the wild at lundberg.com. The Lundbergs were early advocates of brown rice, launching the industry when they broke away from the White Rice Growers Organization back in 1969. That's when they started shipping 50-pound bags of brown rice to American consumers and to grocery stores. It's encouraging every time I talk to a farmer committed to regenerative agriculture to hear how the land can be preserved while remaining productive, delivering the natural and nutritious foods we need. But this is also a work in progress, as we've heard. Extending renewable energy generation, for instance, is difficult because the electric grid is still far away from many fields. Utility companies are also responding to lower solar generation costs by increasing their margins rather than passing savings along to farmers who generate energy or even to us consumers. Expanding the dialogue by sharing more environmental impact information and shining a light on the best practices, along with shaming bad practices, is something that all of us, from consumers at the grocery store to restaurateurs who want to serve healthy, environmentally responsible meals, and farmers who grow and produce our staples, can participate in to make the world a greener, healthier place for humans and other species. So stay tuned for more regenerative agricultural stories. We are going to be sharing them as we find them. I hope you'll take a minute to share this podcast or any of the more than 400 interviews we produced on sustainability in your ear with your friends, your family, your coworkers. Take a moment to write a review on your favorite podcast platform to make the biggest difference. You'll help your neighbors find us. So, folks, be the amplifiers that spread more ideas so we can create less waste. Tell your friends, family, coworkers, your boss that you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any of the other podcast platforms they prefer. Thank you so much, folks, for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Earth911, and we will be back soon with another innovator interview. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.